$500 to $1,000. That's the price range you'll often hear recommended to new watch enthusiasts that want to purchase their first real watch. It's also the worst value in the watch industry today, and that's exactly what I want to talk about in today's video. If you've spent any time in online watch communities, you've probably seen this question many times before, or at least a version of it. How much do I need to spend to get a true quality watch? And like I said, oftentimes that lands you in the price range of $500 to $1,000. On the surface, spending in the $500 to $1,000 price range certainly does open you up to a whole host of really great brands that are very historic and offer some pretty decent watches. But I truly think that the best value in the industry is either above that price range or below it. In my opinion, this price range has some fatal flaws, and a lot of times watches in this price range leave you wanting more in terms of value for money. Okay, but that's enough setup. What I'd like to do in this video is walk you through an example of a watch in the $500 to $1,000 price range as really a proxy for all of the problems you might find in this price range. Then I'll talk about a watch below that price range and above it to talk about why I think you get better value with those prices. Okay, so let's start with a watch that's of course firmly in the $500 to $1,000 price range, one that is very loved in the watch community, and that is the new Seiko Alpinist. Now this is just a random example, but like I said, I really think this is a great proxy for some of the common problems we'll see with value for money in this price range. A lot of the things lacking on this watch, which I'll talk about in a second, are missing on a lot of watches in this range. So again, let's just get into some of those details. Coming in at $995, this new Seiko Alpinist on the surface looks like a really great watch. I'm especially a big fan of the SPB 503, which has that beautiful new teal dial. But the issue is really the details and the things that are missing with $995 being spent on a watch. For basically $1,000, you don't get a signed crown. In fact, this watch has two crowns and neither one of them are signed. This watch also has a 6R55 movement from Seiko, which is pretty reliable, I'm sure, but isn't exactly a top-end movement from the brand for $1,000. I think it's also worth mentioning that the movement isn't exactly decorated particularly well. The back glass that allows you to see the movement also is hard Lex and not sapphire, maybe something you can excuse for $1,000, but it certainly would have been nice as well. The other big problem with this watch is that again, for $1,000, you get a pretty basic bracelet, one that has the standard Seiko clasp we've seen on thousands of models that isn't particularly nice. The bracelet is also sized with push pins instead of screws, which to me is a sign of a pretty low quality bracelet. And to top the issues with the bracelet off, there's no on-the-fly adjustment. So overall what you have here is, yes, a great looking watch, but it's missing a lot of really key features for $1,000. You would definitely expect to get more value for that money spent. And again, the reason why I'm talking about this piece is not to just hate on this one watch, but that it's really a proxy for a lot of the problems we see in this price range. Look at any major brand from $500 to $1,000, and a lot of them have these same issues. And that's really the core of my argument here. Again, there are some great looking watches from $500 to $1,000, and maybe some pieces that I think the watch community definitely loves collectively. But I still think if I'm going to buy a watch, I would rather stay out of this sort of mid-tier price range, and I'd rather spend less and get something with a lot of the same flaws, or I'd rather spend more and get some of those flaws fixed. And that really brings me to talking about watches under the $500 price point, because again, I think if you're going to get watches with issues, you might as well spend less to have some of those same issues. For under $500, you can get watches like the Citizen Tsuyosa, or if you want to get really cheap, the Casio Duro even. And those watches, again, share some of the same flaws as that Seiko Alpinist I used as an example a moment ago. Let's actually take a closer look at the Casio Duro. This is a watch with a very reliable quartz movement, not an automatic movement, but still a reliable quartz. And again, the issues are the same. You can buy it on a bracelet, but it's not a great one. It has an unsigned crown. Again, the movement isn't super sophisticated. A lot of these same boxes that are not checked for the Seiko are not checked for the Casio. So wouldn't you rather spend $50 on this Casio or a Citizen Tsuyosa or whatever watch you want to insert here under $500 instead of spending more for something that's going to leave you unsatisfied as well? And just to take the opposite perspective here, let's also look at watches over $1,000. And just to pick a couple random examples, let's look at the Formex Essence and the Longines Conquest. These are both watches that can be found around $1,500 and even cheaper on the pre-owned market. And both of these watches really address all the issues that are found in the Seiko that was $1,000. With these watches, you're going to get a more advanced movement, signed crowns, better bracelets that have screw links, better clasps, and on-the-fly adjustment. Pretty much every issue is being addressed here with these pieces for $500 more or sometimes even less than that. And I do want to say, I can very much appreciate that spending more money on a watch isn't always an option. Sometimes we allocate a budget for a purchase and spending more just isn't an option. So that being said, of course, you have to purchase something that you're comfortable actually buying. And maybe spending more money, even if it means a couple extra features, that's not always an option, and that's okay. But just to reiterate, I usually avoid that $500 to $1,000 price range. I would almost always rather spend more than $1,000 if it means getting more value, or spending less than that to have some of the same flaws as watches in that price range. And I understand this is a very spec-focused perspective, and really the number one priority with any watch purchase is that you enjoy it and that you're going to wear it. And that is, of course, more important than any specification or feature. My biggest flaw as a watch buyer is that I look at the spec sheet with a magnifying glass and really think long and hard about the features I'm getting and the ones that I'm not getting with every purchase. So of course, as a spec-focused buyer, I certainly am someone who really thinks about whether spending that $500 or $1,000 on a piece that's missing a lot of core features is truly worth it. But let's talk about counter arguments for a second, because I think there is one we have to really discuss here. And that's the fact that there are some good value watches in the $500 to $1,000 price range, but usually they fall into one specific category. And that category is micro brands. For whatever reason, micro brands are able to provide many times more value than some of the big box brands out there. Look at brands like Zelos and Traska. In that $500 to $1,000 range, they're doing a great job of providing good value for money. These micro brands certainly cannot be ignored and are some of the reasons why you should be buying in this price range. Sometimes it's a bit dumbfounding that these micro brands can provide more value than some of the big box brands that have so much more ability to get the prices down with better features, but that's a conversation for another time. And I will admit that this micro brand angle is certainly a great counter argument to my whole philosophy of not buying in this price range, but I think the main thing that someone could argue is that if I want a big box brand, it is going to be harder to get that true value for money. I would consider myself a true enthusiast and I like watches from any brand, but some people out there will say, hey, I want one of these historic brands. I want a Tissot, a Hamilton, and I want the value for money that I can expect from the micro brands and from Chinese brands, for example, in that price range, and that certainly doesn't really exist right now. And yes, there are some great watches in that $500 to $1,000 price range from the big box brands. I think watches like the Tissot PRX and the Tissot Gentleman come to mind, and there are certainly some other examples, but I think those examples are fewer and far between. Now, I guess to wrap things up, this is just my personal collecting philosophy and how I go about buying watches. I don't look at the $500 to $1,000 price range. Again, that doesn't mean that there's not great watches in this price range, but for me, I like to really go through my list of boxes that I want checked for every purchase. I want a great bracelet, I want an on-the-fly adjustment, I want a signed crown, all these different things. And a lot of times I don't find watches in that price range that meet that criteria. But that being said, let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about my collecting philosophy to avoid this price range. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree? And let me know what some of your favorite watches in this price range are. And if you have any unique collecting philosophies that you'd like to share, I'd love to read about them as well. But that's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed it, I would very much appreciate it if you can give this video a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.